Good afternoon. This is Eddie G's Music World for June 17th, 2019. And this is another adventure of mine where I veer off away from the music sometimes to get into some interesting public stories. And today we're following up with Robin Edgar, who has stories to tell. Say hi to the people, Robin. Then I'm going to give a little bit of a speech.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so my brief discussion to start is that since the last 2 weeks, Robin has had his court date and he's going to discuss it, and I'm going to talk to him. But there's also been a certain person who has been one of the very, very few, we're talking 20 something people, that obviously somebody tipped the person off, and she heard it. I'm not mentioning the name of the person because, I mean, I have no issue with her criticizing that I'm talking to Robin. Everybody can say you shouldn't talk to this person or you should talk to that one. But the situation is currently that uh, there's been a threat of a libel lawsuit towards me for talking to Robin. And just to make this perfectly clear, Robin is welcome to discuss things. I am not part of his team. I don't share his efforts in protesting. I don't have anything to do with any legal issues he's had, past, present, or future, with any person or any bunch of people. I'm not protesting him. I'm not stopping him. He's a free agent to do anything he wants. Just like if I go walk down the street and do something terrible to someone, Robin's not guilty. He's not spreading the issue. He's not an accessory. And if Robin does something, and from what I can see, the law has said Robin has not done anything criminal. So for me to talk to Robin about what's going on in his life, and I've checked with a legal person, does not incriminate me in any way, shape, or form, as I have no connection to his activity, even though it's not criminal. People try to pin things on him to make him look like he's done something wrong, and he's been cleared. So this is my statement, and I'm not taking down the previous video because it is evidence of my innocence and of my non participation in anything Robin is doing, which is not to say I'm blaming Robin for whatever he's done or will do or didn't do. It's just to say I'm talking to him. I'm not part of his situation. I'm not. I'm just talking to him. I have a very low-ranking show on YouTube. I'm very happy to invite people to discuss things, but this was the only clarification I wanted to make. So, without further ado, we're going to talk to Robin. And the first thing I wanted to say was, why don't you just give a? You were in court. There was an accusation. You went to court. Why don't you give a whatever? I mean, you don't have a time limit. Give a rendition of what transpired for the first little bit, the main details.
Okay, well, the verdict was rendered on Thursday last week, Thursday the 13th. Turned out to be a lucky day for me and a not so lucky day for the person in question. Do you want me to talk about the actual trial, or do you want to? Because the verdict, I have it right in front of me, and it's quite an interesting verdict. So we're talking about criminal harassment. Criminal harassment is quite narrowly defined in the law. In order for something to be criminal harassment, the person claiming to be the victim has to have actual, genuine fear for their personal safety. Not only do they have to have genuine fear for their safety, but that fear has to have reasonable grounds. You cannot accuse someone or have someone convicted of criminal harassment on the basis of paranoid delusions. So there has to be, even if the person proven to actually be afraid, they also have to prove that they have reasonable grounds for that fear. And there's various other things that have to be proven. It's actually quite a difficult thing to prove beyond reasonable doubt. And Montgomery is not very happy about that. Here's the verdict in terms of the acquittal. In evaluating whether or not the prosecution has established this element of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt, evidence of the complainant's activity subsequent to the prohibited activity is useful, as judges may draw an inference from these to demonstrate the lack of fear. So the element we're talking about here is whether or not Sue Montgomery actually was afraid of me or not. So the judge goes on to say, the March 18th incident in front of the Unitarian Church is important in assessing the fear of the complainant further to the accused conduct. So this is all about assessing whether or not the complainant actually has fear. In her testimony, the complainant stated that she is scared of the accused, that his presence at City Council disconcerts her to the point where she goes to the antechamber in order to avoid seeing him, and that his behavior causes her to look over her shoulder. The judge goes on to say, however, her actions, as shown in D2, speak to the contrary and can be summarized as follows. So D2 is video of Sue Montgomery coming towards me while in protesting outside the Unitarian Church of Montreal on March 18th of last year. She walked towards me very deliberately, no hesitation, beeline. She saw me from a block and a half away, and she kept coming straight towards me. No signs of fear at all in terms of coming towards me. She stopped about 8 to 10 feet in front of me, and at that point I recognized her. I didn't really notice who it was coming towards me until she was like standing in front of me. She pulled out her cell phone, she took a photo, and then she called the police to try to get me arrested for breach of condition. So she's standing at, so many feet in front of me. So the judge says she remained close to the accused for a period of 8 minutes while she waited for the police to arrive. She picked up, dropped, and kicked his sign as he watched. The court interprets this as an attempt to provoke the accused. And that's actually what I've been saying from the beginning is what Sue did is she deliberately came to the Unitarian Church of Montreal with the intention of provoking me because I was under conditions not to communicate with her. So I think that by kicking my picket signs and throwing them into the street repeatedly, even after I picked them up and put them back again in one day, this was a clear attempt to provoke me, as the judge agreed and states. And I didn't tell the judge that because I didn't present a defense. So this is something a conclusion that the judge came to herself.
Did you fear when this happened to you, the kicking? Were you at all fearful for your safety? Because I would think somebody kicking things right next to me would make me scared that they're going to kick me next. I'm not speaking specifically of the person that you're talking about. I'm talking in general. If I was doing something not criminal and somebody came around kicking things that are around me, I would be a bit scared that they might do more. I'm not accusing this person of doing that. I'm just saying I would be a little worried.
Right. I was not worried. I don't scare easily. I don't think Sue does either, to be honest. He claims to be very, very frank to me, but I think it's a lie. I don't believe she genuinely fears. What Sue Montgomery actually fears is not that I'm going to physically attack her. What Sue Montgomery is afraid of is that my allegations about her complicity in Unitarian Universalist surgery efforts will be believed if I'm able to continue to take them and ask questions about me. She brought this charge against me to prevent me from going to city council meetings and asking questions about what I consider to be highly unethical behavior and abuse of power and influence and so on. She had in the past, even before I was arrested on these most recent criminal charges, Sue had involved herself in efforts by the Unitarian Church of Montreal to shut down my protest by making what I consider to be false complaints to the STVM. So she had directly involved herself in that. So anyway, getting back to the verdict here, she minimized the description of her true actions by using words push and shove instead of kick when she described what she did with the protest sign belonging to the accused. Her face and body language did not exhibit any signs of fright. And then it goes on to say, the combination of all these elements leads the court to infer a lack of fear on the complainant's behalf. The court has a reasonable doubt with respect to this element of the offense. Given this conclusion, there is no need to address the fifth essential element. The fifth essential element, by the way, is what I spoke of earlier. Does the person have reasonable grounds for their fear, even if they actually are afraid? So the judge didn't even address that because the judge decided she wasn't afraid. So basically, it goes on and it says I'm acquitted. I think one thing that's very important here that the judge says is she speaks about, she minimized the description of her true actions. But before that, she clearly says her actions, as shown in D2, i.e. the video, speak to the contrary, i.e. speak to the contrary of her sworn testimony in court. The judge did not say in so many words, Sue Montgomery lied in sworn testimony, but that's what that comes down to. You know, basically, the judge is saying Sue said this in sworn testimony, but in reality, it's not true. You know, it's the contrary. So, you know, there's a word for that. That word is perjury, or at least contradictory testimony. And there's actually quite a few lies that Sue Montgomery told during the two trials. And I'm actually looking into bringing perjury charges or contradictory testimony charges against her. Is there anything else you want to know?
I would have liked to ask you this. It's not that private, but were you financially responsible for your lawyer, or was there one appointed to you without?
I'm on the low-ended income scale, so I had it was a private lawyer. It was not a legal aid lawyer, but he agreed to work the legal aid rates. So basically, the taxpayers paid for all this. They paid for everything. You know, the police charges against me, the Crown prosecutors, the judge, all that was paid for by the taxpayers, and my defense was paid for by the taxpayers. So, I mean, I had some expenses, photocopies and this and that.
Wow, that's nothing.
And I may have others, but in terms of the lawyer and many of the related expenses, that's all the taxpayers done. So Sue Montgomery basically wasted not only police resources, Crown prosecutor resources, and so on. She wasted taxpayers' money with this, and it's all about silencing me. It's all about shutting me up. He was trying to force me to shut up about her complicity in Unitarian Universalist clergy cover-up efforts by having me subjected to the court's condition. And as a favor to the church, which actually proves my point about her helping hide clergy abuse, she put in the conditions preventing me from protesting outside the church. If she prevents me from protesting about clergy abuse outside the church with court conditions, she's helping hide clergy abuse. That alone. And actually, getting back to the video, when kicking my signs into the street, when she's throwing them into the street, when she picks them up again and throws them into the street after she kicked them the first time, she's doing this to make the signs unreadable by the public. That alone is, I call this, when she picked up the signs in her hand and threw them into the street, I describe this as hands-on participation in Unitarian Universalist clergy abuse cover-up efforts. Yeah.
Is there any other?
It's like she's burning books. You understand what I'm saying? Like you're trying to hide written communication. I'm trying to communicate something to the public with these signs, and she's trying to hide the signs from the public. That's part of the cover-up, as far as I'm concerned.
That sense, it seems like from what the video shows, that seems pretty accurate from what I could see. One question: do you have any further court appearances that you need to fulfill at this point?
Well, here's the thing: is most ironically, she was trying to get me arrested for breach of condition in that incident, even provoking me. I'm sure she was provoking me to get me to say something like, stop taking those signs and stop doing this. Even if I had said that alone, that would have been a communication, and I was prohibited for communicating with her. So basically, she's provoking me while I got my hands tied behind my back. It was really highly unethical what she did. So I didn't say anything. I just kept myself shut and filmed her and narrated to the camera. So I spoke to my camera loud enough that my narration could be heard, but I wasn't talking to her, and it wasn't really speaking loud enough for her to hear what I was saying. So there was no communication. Actually, there was one little communication. At one point, we sort of brushed by each other, which just proves that she came literally like touching shoulder to shoulder kind of thing. And when that happened, as an automatic thing, I said sorry. So I actually communicated to her by just automatic sorry, because my shoulder brushed up against her as I walked past her, or vice versa. So it's just a totally ridiculous thing. So anyway, getting back to things, as a result of that, at the March City Council meeting, about a week and a half later, I asked Valerie Plante a question about this incident. I wanted Valerie Plante's opinion about this. And as a result of doing that, I was charged with breach of my conditions because they construed that this question, this foul plot about Sue Montgomery constituted communicating to Sue Montgomery. I was found guilty by, let's say, somebody who's known or called a hanging judge by a top-level Montreal criminal defense lawyer, not mine, another one. He called her, this lawyer, not her, him, called this judge a hanging judge because he likes to find people guilty, and that's what he did. We're appealing that. I think it's a very bad decision, very bad jurisprudence, and we're appealing that. So as a result of being found guilty of the breach of conditions, I believe I'm still under the conditions. If that hadn't happened and I'd been acquitted on Thursday, everything would have dropped. There would be no conditions on me. But as it is, I think it's not 100% established, but I'm being cautious. I do try to be reasonably cautious, and so I'm assuming the conditions still apply.
What did you think of someone in the Gazette? I don't remember the guy's name. Throwing your name in the mix of Bain, who you know what he did, Richard Bain, and of course Mark Lepine. That's pretty heavy. It's like saying they said you could do things like them. So by that stretch of a definition, the guy that just put the groceries in my bag at the grocery store could do it. The fireman could do it.
Anyone could do it.
Anybody, the most innocent teacher in a school could open fire on. I mean, there's no limit to who could do it. But they linked you. That is slanderous because they linked you with two convicted murderers without any violence that you did.
The Gazette was reporting things that Sue Montgomery is saying about me. And Paul Cherry is the reporter. He's a former friend, or I should say friend. He's a former colleague of Sue. They even wrote stories together when she was working at the Gazette. So they've worked together very closely in the past. So at minimum, he's a former professional colleague. He could very well be a personal friend. His reports have been quite biased as a result of that. But I think there's also higher level involvement. I think Lucinda Chodan, the editor of the Gazette, is pretty well in cahoots with Sue Montgomery. And because that all of this has to be approved by editors. So I think Lucinda Chodan has some responsibility there too. But anyway, Paul Cherry is reporting Sue Montgomery's words, and as far as those words go, it's total bullshit. I mean, it's basically, if Sue Montgomery really believes this, if she's not just lying, to stir up fear-mongering and so on, if she truly believes that, then all I can say is she is much more in need of psychiatric treatment for her paranoid delusions than she is in need of SCBM police protection, because I have a non-violent philosophy. I do not believe violence solves problems. It usually exacerbates them. Just the fact that I've been protesting outside the church for 20 years peacefully and nobody's been injured or anything should make it clear that I'm non-violent. The police even told Sue the day to assess me as non-violent. How much reassurance does she need? Personally, I generally speaking do not believe she genuinely believes it. I think she's saying this to play the victim and to play up the whole thing of being in danger and fearing for her safety. I think she started off with a lie. She kept it snowballed and snowballed, because she kept having to say how terribly afraid she was, in the hope of getting a conviction, So
I would say that you should actually, you could do what you want, but if it was me, I would probably demand a retraction because they're linking you. That's slanderous. That's accusatory.
For defamation.
No, my point is the article writer who put you in the same group. I mean,
in fact, I've told Paul Cherry that I'm not happy with his reports, and I told him that I expected him to correct things. He refused. He said I'm not correcting anything.
Well.
So, interestingly enough, the most recent report was done by a different reporter, not Paul Cherry, and it was actually more fair and balanced. I can't remember the reporter's name, but I found that report to be more fair and balanced in general. And nothing is perfect. I'm not saying there's not some false information in there and this and that, but it wasn't a total hatchet job like some of the Paul Cherry reports are.
And I was asked by a certain person whose name I'm still not mentioning, what would compel me to talk to you, and it sounds like they assumed they linked me like sausage to you because I'm talking to you, and all I said was basically, if a voice is spoken and I'm giving someone a voice, it's not an endorsement, and you haven't.
Right.
And if you had done violence, I wouldn't have ever talked to you because, like you say, I am also the same in that sense, not violent. I've never. I think I hit a kid when I was 9.5 in 1969. Yeah, I mean, I got into fights with other brats down the street that challenged me. But since 9, I don't think I've been in a fight, and I don't think I even won that fight. I'm not a fighter. I don't threaten. I've never said I'm going to get you.
He assaulted me first, so I just gave him a good slap.
Right. Well, like I say, that seems to be the main focus of well, the main thing is I wanted you to have a word, and I would say just to keep myself out of the negative light that I've been thrust into, I wouldn't mind discussing things in future as well with you, but of course I'm not going to bring this topic back around because at this point, unless there's a new massive development, I'd probably rather hear other things just so, if I need be, I have an outlet to defend myself, but I'm not inviting someone to attack me.
There are serious freedom of speech issues here. Essentially what Sue Montgomery did is she brought false criminal harassment charges against me to suppress my charter rights to engage in freedom of speech, to engage in peaceful public protest especially. She did it to shut me down, to prevent me from going to city council meetings. And when she did that, basically I cannot go to city council meetings at all. So it's not even just a question of preventing me from asking questions about her. It prevents me from asking questions to any other politician about any other subject. In order to silence me and prevent me from asking questions about her and her unethical behavior and abuse of power and so on, by placing these conditions on me, I can't ask any politician any other question about any other subject. It's outrageous as far as I can. It's a real attack on freedom of speech, and it really needs to be condemned and dealt with, and I'll be working on that.
Final question. I think it's the last one, maybe one more. As other media picked up, besides the two places, well, I'm not really an official media person. I'm just a guy in a basement, pretty much. But other than the Gazette and someone else, has there been other people approaching you?
Well, put it this way: very few reporters have actually even asked me questions until just very recently. I even went up to reporters like Paul Cherry and said, "Hey, you want to ask me some questions?" And they refused. So Sue Montgomery, don't forget, she's the former Gazette justice reporter.
Of course.
Influence in the Montreal journalistic community. Believe me, I've seen her giving instructions to the journalists that are covering the story, like do this or do that, or don't do this and don't do that. And, she is influencing the media above me on just talking to them. A lot of them are former colleagues, so they're basically friends on friendly terms and everything. Of course, she's using all her contacts, not to mention her knowledge, of the justice system as a court reporter. She's really abusing her power and influence in many ways.
Do you think that talking to me is going to ever be perceived as legally putting yourself in jeopardy? From what you know?
Very truthful and supported by evidence.
Pardon?
Everything I'm saying is very truthful and supported by evidence.
But uttering the name of the person.
Protect freedom of opinion and freedom of expression.
I agree.
And even very, wrong opinion, but this is not a wrong opinion. This is a very, very rational and reasonable opinion based on facts.
I meant it as uttering the person's name. Is that a breach of your situation?
No. It has to be a communication to the person.
And I am not.
So no, public, speaking public. Actually, speaking of that, here's the interesting thing. I told you how this judge had ruled that my question to Valerie Plante constituted communication to Sue Montgomery. Well, guess what? In the more recent trial on the main charges of criminal harassment, the other judge who acquitted me included in the acquittal that the Crown had not proved beyond reasonable doubt that I had communicated with Sue Montgomery in the other question. So this judge actually contradicted the previous judge. So there's like two different decisions there. I can actually, and I tend to talk to my lawyer, but I think I can use this judge's ruling that I did not, or at least that the Crown did not prove beyond reasonable doubt that I communicated with Sue Montgomery when I asked other questions. It's like two contradictory findings. So, and in my opinion, I went to City Council to ask questions to other politicians about Sue Montgomery's behavior. To me, that is not communicating to Sue. That is to get the opinion of other politicians about Sue. It's really not a communication to Sue.
And tweeting, like, is tweeting something that you're very careful about as well, just in case that's interpreted as communicating with the person?
Again, it's publicly, no. I would have to address the tweet to her,
right?
For it to be a communication.
Okay.
So if I'm talking to someone else publicly about her, that's not communication with her.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate the time, and like I said,
well, I appreciate yours.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not on a side. I'm on the side of allowing someone to talk. If that's criminal, then I guess I'm breaking laws by talking to people to let them give their side. That's all this ever was. Yeah. And if there's ever events coming up that I think this subject, from my point of view, you're not welcome, but that particular angle has been done. And then, well, I'll keep you up to date if there's any, I might, if there's any legal ramifications for me, I'll let you know. And we can discuss things down the road. My kids are off school for about 2 months, so I'm going to have them around when I talk on the show. So it'll be hard to do shows for a couple of months. I might do it if my wife corrals them and locks them in a room, because they won't stop talking. They're like me; they won't shut up. But thank you very much, Robin Edgar. Thank you for clearing.
And I really do appreciate you doing your citizen journalism.
Well, I think other media should pick up on it, but I have no job to lose, so I don't care. Yeah. I'm not making one dime, I know that. Not a cent, and I don't expect to.
Appreciate that. And here's the thing: you've actually done a much better job of interviewing me than any other professional journalist so far.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a compliment. And then I'll give a final note that I'm a little bitter over the last 40 years because, well, I'll mention them. Stations like Shome and CJD have rebuffed me for so many years that I've just given up. And they own each other. They're all incestuous. They own each other. They'll never give me a job. I just gave up. And I did work for them as a volunteer in the 80s, but that's as close as I got. So I do this for fun. I figure.
There's something coming up on CJD that I want to chime in on. So
go ahead. I appreciate the time. We'll talk again soon through various ways. Take care, Robin.
Have a great summer. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye. You too.